Hello everyone, my name is Brandy Martinez and this is my Assignment 5 reflection and revisions on our unit. So the first revision that I think I would like to make is one for the assessment. So I would like to have students complete a vocabulary assessment to gauge how well they understand the words associated with the unit. I introduced them and I had explicit vocabulary instruction, but I didn't really do anything with the words afterward. So I feel like it would be important to kind of have a vocabulary assessment to see how much they've retained and to know that they know the words. I would need to make sure that the students are reviewing the words and their meanings and that they're getting opportunities to interact with the words and having authentic opportunities to do that. I always like using GimKit because students love that. So anytime that we use GimKit, they're having a blast. And then I would administer the assessment via a Google form. So that's something I really want to do every time I teach one of these lessons. The next is a reflection piece. So I forgot to add this to my unit, but I have students reflect on their learning by creating one sentence to summarize what they've learned with the use of the words on their dots chart. So they look at their dots chart, they look at all the different words that they have in there, and then they try to use as many as they can to make a sentence that kind of summarizes that unit. So I would write the word fishing, and then they would have to use as many words as they can to kind of summarize what fishing is. Next is an extension activity, so that should say revision 3. I want to make sure all of my students have access to an extension activity. So some students get finished earlier, some get finished later, but having an extension activity, and this one in particular, is something that I really need to make sure I embed into my lesson. So there's a website called Test Drive that's a social media simulator, and this simulation would allow students to see what it would be like to see an online scam or to try to have someone steal their identity. They have a lot of fun with it. I've done this. I know that I always look at the test drive, but then I forget to put it into my lesson or have my kids actually do it. So I feel like this extension activity would just kind of hit it a little bit more to home, and they could really kind of see firsthand what could happen. So how do the tasks yield appropriate evidence of the identified understanding? So I used the backwards design model. So I was thinking about the objective at first, and all the tasks that I created kind of were centered around that objective. So using the explicit vocabulary instruction, because they're getting to work with those tier 3 words before they're exposed to them. Group discussions, they help understand each other's point of view and experiences. And then independent work, it gauges the students' individual knowledge, which is what I want to know. I want to know what they know. How do the tasks involve a complex, real-world, authentic application of identified knowledge, skill, and understanding? So in creating the sentence stems for the vocabulary words, I really try to have students think about their own real-world experiences. Truthfully, this whole entire unit has everything to do with their real-world life, because they're thinking about, okay, when have I ever been exposed to something that could have been identity theft or an online scam, or when have I seen this in my life? How are a variety of appropriate assessment formats used to provide additional evidence of learning? So these are the different assessments that I kind of use. The dots chart, it's kind of a formative assessment, and as I'm walking around when they're filling them out, I can kind of see the connections that they're making to the concepts that we're learning. Whenever they summarize that sentence, then I really kind of know what have they learned throughout this whole entire unit. And then that document gauges the students' individual understanding of the concepts that we've learned, because they have to tell me if that message is a phishing attempt or not. And then finally, how are students given the opportunity to self-assess and reflect upon their learning and performance? So I think the extension activity and the summarizing activity both allow students to self-assess and reflect, because they are kind of thinking about what their real life looks like and having to make those decisions in that simulation. And then when they summarize, they obviously have to kind of think about what they've learned. And then in the second part, they're also going to receive their score immediately after they've completed the vocabulary assessment, so they can kind of reflect on that. I know that whenever they have access to that score immediately, they're like, oh man, I know what those words mean, or oh man, I don't know what those words mean. So it can kind of give them a little bit of knowledge about their own knowledge. So hopefully all of this made sense, and yeah, thank you so much for watching.